What's going on, guys? Drive-in dust, buzzing neon, and the faint smell of VHS tapes. Welcome to After Hours Video. Tonight on After Dark, I'm joined by my friends Garrett from Born to Be Rad and Jordan from the Movie Den. What's going on, guys?
What's going
What's up,
on?
man? Thanks for having me, guys. I really dig that intro song, man.
Oh,
It's
thank
so
you.
chill.
Thank you.
It brings me to a whole new place. I love it.
I don't know. For me, and I was gonna say, makes me want to go pop on Drive and just watch that a little bit after this.
You know what?
That's what it sounds like to me.
That's the aesthetic I was going for.
You nailed it.
One.
Look, guys, tonight we're going to be wandering the aisles of Tobe Hooper's sweaty, unrelenting horror. So, from back roads to haunted homes, chainsaws to cosmic terror, Hooper's films make nightmares feel lived in. So, grab some pizza, pour a drink, and settle in. Let the tapes hiss, the lights flicker, and the nights stretch out like endless horror shelves. After Dark starts here. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And wanted to kind of start out, this tonight's really going to be an appreciation of none other than Tobe Hooper, a director that I feel like has such a iconic filmography, and I don't feel like it's talked about enough when it comes to horror films and just how impactful he was. But where did it all begin for you guys? Like, what films initially kicked this off for you? Your interest in Tobe Hooper, and how did you initially discover his films?
For me, I mean, it was definitely Texas Chainsaw Massacre was when I discovered him. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a movie that was shown to me way too young. It was actually probably one of the first horror movies shown to me as a kid. I've talked about this a lot of times on the channel, is that my uncle's the one who kind of got me into horror. He's been obsessed with it ever since I was a kid. And that and pro wrestling, his goal was to like get me to love both of them, and he succeeded with that. But I remember he used to have like a large VHS collection, and I would go to my grandmother's house, and he was a lot younger than my father. So, he would always like bring me in the other room and be like, oh, watch this. And I remember him putting on Texas Chainsaw Massacre with a title like that. I could have been 5 or 6 years old. Hearing a title like that was like mind blowing at the time. Like, what the heck could this be? And I can remember him showing me the beginning. And as soon as it got to like where the hitchhiker got in the van, my father came in. He was like, get this off, and like they shut it off. And for years, I remembered like that first block of like, Franklin in the wheelchair trying to take a piss on the side of the road, flying down the hill. Like that was embedded in my brain for such a long time. And the craziest thing, and I've talked about this before too, about that is when the hitchhiker got into the van.
Ooh.
The guys that were driving the van look, and they said, it looks like we just picked up Dracula. And that's kind of the last thing I remember about the movie. So when he shut it off, like that was the last thing I heard. And, for a long period of time growing up, I thought to myself, like, man, remember that movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where like Dracula's in the back of the van? Like I couldn't, I had no idea, like, because at 5 years old, you hear we picked up Dracula. I like really thought that was Dracula for a long period of time. I was like, yeah, I want this movie where Dracula's and they pick him up on the side of the road. And until I was like a teenager and finally watched it for the first time is when I really figured out what the hell was going on. But as a kid, like Hitchhiker was Dracula, man, to me. Like that was that was definitely my introduction to Tobe Hooper as a young lad.
What about you, Jordan? Where'd your love initially kick off?
Well, I can tell you the first Tobe Hooper film I ever saw was Poltergeist.
Okay.
Saw that at a young age. I was young, not knowing, you're at an age where you don't really know, okay, this is a Tobe Hooper film, all the ins and like the directors, you don't really know. But I do remember the first time I really started to recognize, okay, this is Tobe Hooper. This is who he is. And this is what got me to fall in love with that director. Same as Garrett, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I think that's going to be, that's kind of the common answer because that is I would argue his most well-known film, rightfully so.
For sure.
I remember first watching it, and it's one of those, you kind of feel like you have to take a shower afterwards. That's how it felt when I was younger. And it's an overwhelming type of movie. The way it's shot, the ending scene at the dining table, everything about it is very just stress inducing. I remember that as a kid watching that. And from then on, it was just, I knew who Tobe Hooper was, but it was really just Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, Tobe Hooper, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that's about it. It wasn't until a little later when I got older that I started to kind of search out more of his films.
100%. And I feel like Texas Chainsaw for sure. I mean, that I vividly remember watching that and Alien roughly in that same time. And I remember, you know, it was a hot summer. I remember watching it down in the basement, lights off, and I remember, you know, renting this, and you just heard so much about it. But a film like that, it's almost like it lives on in your memory as being so much more graphic and gory than in reality it really is. And I just distinctly remember just how uncomfortable I was, this, you know, heavy anxiety watching the film. And Jordan, I agree with you. I think Poltergeist probably was the follow-up film that I eventually end up discovering. And um, yeah, I mean, it set the stage for everything that came after that point. But real quickly before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and just check on the chat real quick. So we actually have Alexander joining us. What's going on?
What up?
Hey,
We got Robert joining us.
what's going on, Robert?
What's happening, Robert? Thank you so much for joining us. We got Kuato joining us this evening. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And then Alexander mentioned first ever horror film that introduced me to Tobe Hooper was Crocodile. Rented it from Blockbuster as a kid and is still to this day my favorite. You guys seen that?
Yeah, you know, I was just gonna ask you guys that because there's so many movies called Crocodile, and I was like, I forgot he did one. I do have it on DVD right there, but I didn't know if you guys knew. Does it have another edition anywhere, or is that it?
I don't know if I've seen that one, to be honest.
I haven't seen that one either.
Might have to do a deep dive. Garrett, do you recommend or?
You know, I don't remember because I mean there are so many crocodile movies, Killer Crocodile, this Crocodile. So
Mhm.
I don't remember which one is which, but I was just curious because again, yeah, I haven't heard anybody talk about that one in a while, and I wasn't sure if that was one that did get a release somewhere or it's still just stuck on DVD. But I'll find out.
And then Alexander also mentioned the first slasher I ever saw was the 03 version. I feel like that's the case for a lot of people we know. And I didn't see the 74 version until I was an adult. I mean, I'm sure you guys could weigh in on this. I feel like those movies are just so, obviously it's like the same overarching theme and plot to a certain extent, but they have much different approaches to how they take on that film.
Yeah.
Are you guys fans of the 03 remake?
Oh yeah,
I am.
enjoy it.
I always
Same.
liked it. I think they did a really good job with it. And you know what I think it works about Texas Chainsaw, the original, is it's a very less is more type of concept. Like when you really think about the gore and stuff like that, like there's not much, and they just make it work so much
Mhm.
visually. Like that scene when you first see Leatherface for the first time, where he opens that door, clocks the guy, brings him in and shuts it, and it's like dung. Like that still sticks with me. Like the first day I ever saw that scene, it really took me back, and I'm like, wow, so much and so effective for something that didn't really have any kind of like jump scare, like lead up or anything like that. It was just kind of subtle, and then it just like went balls to the walls and then back subtle again. And I think that really is just telling of that movie. And as much as like I liked 03, I feel like they really tried to just amp it up a little bit with a lot more like meat on the bone type of thing with the gore and stuff, which I
Literally.
appreciate for sure. But I think, you know, what made Texas Chainsaw work so well was the fact that it almost kind of felt real. Like Jordan said earlier, like you feel like you got to take a shower afterwards because it feels hot, like watching the thing. It smells watching the thing. Like everything just seems uncomfortable, like you are in that Texas heat, like watching this thing unfold. And it's hard for movies to really do that effectively, and I feel like that is one that does.
Well, I would say the 74, like the original, has more of that gritty documentary feel to it, where I think if you didn't know any better, you might be able to pass it off as like, hey, maybe this actually happened, or this is just like a take on, you know, real events unfolded. And I remember when I initially had seen these movies, and mind you, it was years ago, but I just remember being so convinced that this could be real, you know. And it's not to, obviously you learn years later that, you know, there's influence taken from various killers and things like that. But yeah, it's very interesting. Let's see. And then we got Fat Pig the Conqueror joining us. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with us. First footage I ever saw of TCM was in the comedy movie Summer School because they screened it in the classroom, and then also mentioned that I think the Burbs used footage from TCM as well.
I think they did. I don't remember. I just remember him having that nightmare where the chainsaw goes through the steel chainsaw goes through the side of the
Yes.
from the drywall.
I think it was. Is it part 1 and 2 or just part 1? But there definitely is. It is Texas Chainsaw from in that movie. Yeah, that he's watching on TV, and he's watching the Sentinel as well. That's in there. But I don't know if it was part. I remember him dancing around the street, flinging the chainsaw around. But I'm not sure. Did they do anything from part 2 in that, or was it just the original one? I forget. But yeah, it's definitely in the Burbs for sure.
Well, listen, before we start diving into his filmography, I feel like an honorable mention that we wanted to discuss to start off this live stream was talking about Tobe Hooper's Eaten Alive. This film came out in 1976, and I feel like that this is one of the films that kind of gets sandwiched in between some of his other more notable releases. And Garrett, what can you remember about this movie? I mean, was this one that do you consider this more of like a deep cut as far as out of his films, or where does this rank for you?
I do now. The more I kind of get into all this, the more I feel like it is a deep cut, and it's not one that many people talk about. But to me, growing up, it wasn't really a deep cut because, again, my uncle was the one who really got me into horror, and he was kind of putting these movies in front of me, and whatever he said, I believed. So, Eaten Alive was one that he recommended all the time, and he's like, "Oh, listen, it came out right after Texas Chainsaw. It's got a similar feel.
Mhm.
You've got, Robert Englund in there. You've got Marilyn Burns, so it really does kind of feel connected in a weird way." So to me, it was always an important flick, but you don't realize, as you kind of embrace more stuff and talk to more people, it's not one of the main ones that maybe I once thought it was because of how he kind of put it up on a pedestal. Now, I think it's pretty overlooked. I think what this does well was it gives that grittiness the same way Texas Chainsaw was able to do. And like I said before, I don't think many movies can do that correctly. And
Totally.
this has that very similar grimy feel, and having Marilyn Burns in there really helps. You have, Robert Englund in there as Buck that likes to fuck. So that's Robert Englund's character in there. And it's basically about this guy that runs like this old motel at a bayou. I think it's called like Motel Starlight. And he's got this huge alligator that lives in the bayou right there. And basically he just feeds the alligator feeds people to the alligator. So it's kind of a cool concept. It's different. And it's got all these different elements going on. And I think it feels a little low budget at times, but I do feel like it's effective, and I feel like it's one that I think people should definitely check out. I brought some stuff to the table, so I did bring, this cool like DVD.
Ooh.
It was like a 2-disc special edition. It came out from Dark Sky back in the day, so this was a big deal. And then
Very nice.
And then Arrow Video did the Blu-ray. I'm not sure if a lot of people know that because this is a pretty early on one. That they did. So there is a Blu-ray now. If it's in print, I don't know. I've had this a long time, but yeah, it's out there for anybody that wants to check it. I'm sure you could probably find it on Tubi or something like that, but it's definitely one to check out. And like I said, it's cool to see. It feels very connected to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as far as how it was filmed and shot, and having Marilyn Burns in there. And I really think it's definitely worth a check.
For sure. And I know Jordan and I were talking about it, that it's been some time since we've had a chance to see it. I just remember first time watching, I think it was a little bit further down the line after I was really getting into some of his films, and it definitely still has that low budget feel, almost feels like very Sinister-esque to it, where you just feel like still that hot, sweaty
100%.
feel to it, the same way that Texas Chainsaw was. But I don't know, there's just something that, again, with this film, this feels like it could be a little bit more believable, in the sense that, something like this and the backwoods, something like this potentially could happen, as opposed to Texas Chainsaw, which we know that's been taken influence from a number of different events. Jordan, did you have a lot of experience with this movie at all, like back when you had initially seen it? Or
No. This is very, I don't really know anything about Eaten Alive other than what Garrett just told us. So
yeah,
this is one that I was actually, Garrett, while you were saying that, talking about, I was pulling it up on online. It is on Amazon. I don't know. It looks like it's still in print, maybe. But it's just like the basic Blu-ray like you have. I was just looking it up.
It feels like one of the Hooper films that we haven't gotten some type of 4K boutique release for yet. So I wonder if that's something that maybe could, come down the line. I feel like, I'm riding the high of Salem's Lot right now.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope so, right? But you always wonder though, like talking to you guys and saying how how much you guys have seen, and be like, and for Jordan to be like, I've never really heard about it too much, and it's one of those ones where you're like, I would love to see this get a nice edition, because what's nice when these kind of things happen, is it gives a new life to a movie that maybe just kind of falls to the wayside. But then you look at it too, and you're like, because it's not really a big title, like, would they put the effort into doing this, or is this going to kind of be like the last way this ever going to be seen? I don't know. So it would be interesting to see if somebody else or Arrow would even give this thing another chance. I think they should, but you always wonder if they look at that and not see dollar signs with a movie like that.
For sure. And I wonder, even with the Blu-ray release, I mean, I can't help but wonder if that sold well when they initially released it. I feel like that one's been out for some time. And just kind of diving back into the chat before we get rolling. So Alexander said, sadly, I don't think it has another edition. Luckily, I bought Crocodile from Blockbuster, previously viewed when I was in high school. And also mentioned TCM 03 is one of the greatest remakes ever. The atmosphere, the hot cast, the leather-faced look, the horror, and that sick camera shot after the gunshot. Yeah. And what's wild is, like, doing more research into both films, and understanding Daniel Pearl coming back as a cinematographer in wildly different approaches to this film, aesthetically, as well as the camera style all these years later. It's just so fascinating to me to see him return to this movie and to really be able to give its own distinct look, as opposed to what the first one was like. And we've got The Ring joining us. He said the Burbs had TCM2 clips in it. He mentioned that just part 2, I think. And then Alexander's also praising Garrett's setup. He says your setup is fantastic. All right.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, I figure the perfect starting point for tonight's conversation would be none other than Texas Chainsaw
Man,
Massacre.
I'm telling you, those VHSs you have.
So let's dive into this. So we obviously know, where you guys initially were introduced to this film. And do you guys have any like video store memories, ever seen this at the video store when you were growing up? Or was this one that stood out to you on the shelves when you saw it?
For me, early on, I don't remember seeing this one in particular much. I remember seeing the 03 a lot. That green kind of cover of Leatherface. For this, I saw it was my dad who showed me very early on. I think he might have had a VHS or a DVD or something that he showed. So as far as seeing it in the video store, not a whole lot of memories personally of seeing it. It was more 03 that I saw a lot of.
Garrett, what about you?
I remembered it from the video store, but like I said, my uncle really wanted me to love this movie. It's one of his favorites. So he ended up giving me his VHS tape. It was it was the media one that I wish I still had, but that went away in part of my VHS purge in like 08, which I really regret because I still don't have it again. But so I had that one and I would watch it a lot, and so much so that I fell in love with it. And for some reason, I wanted everybody else to fall in love with it too. So that tape like came with me everywhere. Like if I went to a friend's house, I brought it. Like, oh, you got to check this out. Like I literally would go like over like a girl's house and I'd bring it like on the first day, like meeting this person.
Listen, that's how you know if it's a real one.
Yeah, right.
And it'd be like,
how
oh,
you vet them out. All right.
Like, how about this one? I have like Texas Chainsaw like in my hand. Like I literally was really just trying to get everybody to check this out because it was like unlike anything I'd ever seen before. So I had that VHS tape, but that's long gone. But I wanted to take a different angle here. And I love that you showed the VHS. So I have some DVDs. This is the Rookie Pioneer DVD for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is the old guy, right? This is the first time it hit disc. And shortly after we got that one of the first ever
Oh,
steelbooks
I had that
ever.
one.
Nice.
This could have been one of the first steelbooks ever made. So this is another one from Pioneer as well. And then I have, which is another is this Pioneer too? The steelbook? No, steelbook was Dark Sky. So the other Pioneer one that came out after the one I showed you was this classic meat pack edition. I can remember when this sucker came out, man. It was, and it's all embossed. It looks like it's like a fresh batch of ground beef in there. This was like the coolest freaking release ever back in the day. I can remember looking in the Best Buy catalog on like a Sunday, and my uncle and I being like, "Oh my god, it's coming out! Look at that edition!" And I remember being there Tuesday with, you know, money in my hand from him to buy 2 of these things. So this holds a special place in my heart. I just think it's such a cool ass addition for Texas Chainsaw. Yeah,
very nice. Listen, I can always count on you, Garrett, to bring all like the cool editions for every one of these movies.
Hey,
so
listen, I think you probably get a better VHS collection than I do.
Oh my gosh, it's
half of them are gone. I'm rebuying all those things for like top dollar now.
I know, and some of these like I feel like they're definitely tough to come by or to get them in at least half decent shape. Okay, so listen, what do you guys think? What makes Texas Chainsaw Massacre feel so real compared to other horror films of its time?
Well, one, I think it's you guys have touched on less is more approach. Seems more realistic that way. Seems more something that would be shot and be aired than let's say the 03 remake, which is very gory. The whole idea of Tobe Hooper not showing you much, really, like the meat hook scene. You don't see it happen. I mean, you do, but you don't see the hook going in the back. It's implied. It's shown that way. He did something so well with this movie is he left it up to the viewer's imagination of what they thought was going on. You'd like the door, him pulling you through the guy through the door right at the beginning. And then it's very symbolic, you know, you see part of it and he's going to slam the door on you. Now you have to imagine what's going on in there, which is arguably scarier than what anybody can show you, because now it's whatever you can think up is going to be going on in that house. That's what makes it so real for me. And plus the kind of the grimy old VHS, looks like you pulled it out of a dumpster grindhouse feel it has to it.
No, it definitely has a very visceral, you know, uncomfortable feel to it. And I think like going back to what Jordan was saying earlier is that the less is more approach, like another film that I feel like that kind of definitely capitalizes in on that is Halloween. You know, we think of that film as being, I wouldn't say graphic, but you think of it being more violent than it actually is. And in reality, I think that's what Carpenter does so effectively is it's less is more. You know, you're not seeing a lot of the violence. It's more implied violence than anything. What about you, Garrett? What do you think? Why do you think this one stands out so much?
Everything that you guys said, and you know, going through the house, and like Jordan said, you're not sure what the hell's going on in there. I mean, she's going in, they're in the different rooms. There's like feathers and shit all over the kitchen floor. There's bones hanging up. There's chickens in cages. You're like, what the hell is going on in this house? You know, you don't know. Like your mind's going everywhere. Like what is happening in here? You know. And then Leatherface comes out and he's freaking out and panicking why these people keep coming into his house. Like, where are they coming from? Like, we haven't had people over here in forever. So he starts freaking out, right?
Trying to clean things up.
Yeah. You know what's crazy too is it's the first time, and again, this is just showing my age, I think, is that it's the first time that I remember watching a movie where everything kind of connects at the end, and you're kind of like, wow, that was pretty cool, because like everybody that they ran into were actually all part of the same family. So like different parts of the day, it's like you meet the cook and he's like, oh, I'm gonna help you, I'm gonna help you guys out, and then he's bringing them to the house, and all of a sudden they look out, they're like, holy shit, there's the hitchhiker from earlier. And then you got Leatherface waiting there. And it's just crazy that like everything kind of came full circle. And it was really, really cool, you know, watching that for the first time and discovering that like that twist that everybody's kind of involved. And it was the first time I remember ever seeing something like that in a movie. And I really, really stuck with me. But yeah, I think it really is that less is more approach. And other movies, that's why I just love like things from the 70s and early 80s. Stuff, sometimes they did that less is more, like The Hills Have Eyes, I feel like, is a very similar tone where like that original one, some people are like, oh, it's boring, you know, when you compare it to the remake. But yeah, but that's the thing. Like they're out there stuck, and all of a sudden these just random dudes are up in these mountains. They're not mutants. They're kind of, you know, they look a little bit more like incestual, I guess, but like it's more realistic than
For
just
sure.
having like these brutal, you know, monsters coming down the thing and terrorizing everybody. And I really think that's what I love about movies of that time is it does feel like holy shit, like this could happen if I was stranded out here. I don't know who the hell's up there.
Well, it's
Um,
like I think that there's like it blurs the line between reality and, you know, just the horrors of our imagination. With a film like that, you're talking about The Hills of Eyes, because I think in a lot of ways, I mean, you know, you can't help but wonder, I mean, what if there was nuclear fallout that really did this to people and they're just so far removed from society? Um, you know, I think that's what the ingenious of someone like you know, Wes Craven being able to come up with a concept like that,
mhm.
very startling. But I have to ask, like, why does this movie feel so violent, even though it shows relatively little gore? You think it's more of the less is more approach to it, or are there other factors that weigh in?
I think it is like he said, the implied of like things like the hook. I think when they, you know, they open up that freezer and they
Hmm.
come out and they're like, well, I don't even know what the hell's happening here. Are they dead? Are
Hmm.
they alive? They're freaking out. And you know, then all of a sudden you get that dinner scene and
Hmm.
she's screaming at the top of her lungs. They're kind of holding her down. You can only imagine the terror that's going through this woman's, you know, brain. Like, what the hell's happening here? Then you got this guy just clonking her in the head with like this sledgehammer, like this little hammer, and it's like nicking her. And then it's like, you know, it's not putting her out, but it's like you could tell every one of those hits hurt like a bastard, right? And you feel it, you know, and I think that's what else is so effective. It wasn't just like a boom, head shatters open and she's laying
No,
there. Like he was missing, he was nicking, and she got away, but like she was injured, and you felt every one of those hits. And I just think it was the terror that it brought because you were really just unsure, like, what are they gonna do with this person? Are they gonna eat her? Like, what's their plan here? Like,
or
you know,
the
he's
cook
sucking
with
on
the
her
broom.
fingers and shit.
Yeah.
It's weird, you know.
It's and with that dinner scene too, I mean, he does a great POV shot where you feel like you're at the dinner
Hmm.
table with the family themselves, with of
Mhm.
them
Hundred
looking at the
percent
camera at you. You're at the head of the table now. You're invited to this family's dinner,
pure
and
panic.
to getting hit and not immediately, you know, cutting away, seeing the aftermath of that getting hit. You know, it's not a lot of people's favorite movie, but I think of Rob Zombie's Halloween at the beginning when he hits the boyfriend's over the head with a bat,
Oh yeah,
and it's just the seizure he has. It's kind of that similar effect in a way where it's not just it's more realistic that way. It's how something would really happen. And it's very similar to that dinner scene when they're hitting her on the head. You know, you're not immediately going, I mean, unless you get a good hit, right?
yeah.
You know, there's gonna have some stuff that comes after that. So
Oof, brutal. Uh, okay, so how important do you feel like the sound design was for the overall experience that you get out of this movie? So I guess you could say whether it's chainsaws, you know, metal sounds, animal noises, you know, the silence that we get, you know, when they're either moving throughout the house or leading up to the house, or if they're out in the woods. Do you feel like that enhanced your movie going experience with this one?
100%. I think it
mhm.
all worked, all of it.
it's it's more to that less is more type thing. It's just noise.
Hmm.
And these are noises you would hear in the backwoods of Texas at that time. You know, you would think. Um, it puts you there more, even more so than if he had a full fledged out score.
For
I
sure.
think.
I think it elevates the experience and it feels very industrial sounding, just amps up the level of discomfort that you're getting, you know, as we're, you know, catching views of different rooms throughout the house, or, you know, any areas surrounding the house. Uh, and for you guys, what scene stuck out with you the most and why in this film?
The 3 is gotta be Hitchhiker in the van, you know, "I
Hmm.
got a
Mhm.
knife, it's a good knife," like that one. The door slamming scene and I think the dinner scene are probably the 3 that really stick out to me, for the movie.
Jordan, what about you?
I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. You know, the hitchhiker scene. Well, and the whole idea where he starts putting together this like seance looking ritual thing he's doing, you know, with his bag full of goodies he's got around his. I mean, that's what's so scary about the hitchhiker is he's so unpredictable. He's not someone that you can calculate and figure out what he's going to do next. Because
like
I
a
don't
wild
even
card.
think I don't think he even really knows what he's going to do next.
No.
Right. But another scene for me is the opening shot of the bodies on the tombstone.
Oh yeah.
You know, right there. I mean, that's when that shot hits, you know, okay, we're in for something that has never been done before. This is something different.
Yeah, I would have to say, I mean, the one that always stands out to me, and I mean, it's been, you know, highlighted to death, but the very end scene, the chase sequence, as she's basically getting outside of breaks through the window, and she's basically like hysterical, trying to just get away from the home. And it just feels like we have so many times where, you know, you're just like, get the fuck out of there. You know, she can't run fast enough, obviously. And, you know, towards the end, eventually she gets in the truck and, you know, she's just screaming hysterically. And it's almost like, I think what I love about that shot so much is that she got away, but at what cost? It kind of leaves that up to your imagination after the film's over. And I can't help but wonder, even if she goes back to society, you know, for whatever that's worth, would she ever be the same again after experiencing something so heinous, like that whole event? I don't know.
They explain in the new one. Remember, they bring her back to get her revenge. She looks like Mick Garris. Yeah, that one.
In my mind, it had a different ending.
That one doesn't exist.
No, I'm like, I feel like they just did such a misjustice to that character. I was like, damn,
100%.
man, how's she about to go out like that? Anyways, so for you guys, what makes Leatherface such an enduring horror figure? I mean, we've obviously gotten sequels with him in it and varying depictions, but what is it specifically about where it all started that stands out to you guys?
For me, I think Leatherface stands out because, you know, how he was originally portrayed was, like I said, he was just this, I don't know, like how would you word this, I guess, but I mean, he wasn't a ruthless killer like a lot of these other slashers are. You know, he wasn't someone that's out there being like, I'm going to hunt all these people down and kill them. Like, he was protecting his house, like animalistic style. Like, I mean, he didn't know. So I think that's what sets him a little bit apart, is that it was just the approach of who he was in those couple movies, in compared to like what it was in, you know, some of the remakes and stuff where he was like a little bit more cold-blooded and stuff like that,
Totally.
more aggressive. Yeah. But that's kind of where I would set him apart from that. And I just think he's iconic as far as the look and, you know, having that chainsaw and the mask and all that stuff. Yeah.
If you notice in the movie, all the other characters that they come across with, they really start to meet outside of the house, where Leatherface, he's the house, he's a protector. He's not going to mess with you until you come into his home.
100%.
And he's something that I would argue the family kind of take advantage of him. Right. He's he's kind of a kid trapped in this monstrous, beastly body is what he is. And it really, I mean, we'll probably talk about this later, but into Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, they kind of go into that a little more
for sure
in that movie. But I think he's just, and the kind of the meat apron that he wears too, I think it's just adds to that look he's got going on with him.
You know, you got to feel bad for him because, like you said, it's like he doesn't know any better. But this one scene in the movie that always made me laugh was when they're doing the dinner scene, and all of a sudden he's like, "Help your brother." And all of a sudden Hitchhiker's like, "Hey, Leatherface, help me with Grandpa." It's like, you're calling him Leatherface? Like, that's what they call him? Like, imagine if your brother called you Leatherface. Hey, Leatherface. I'm like, they're really calling him Leatherface.
Poor guy.
Poor bastard.
Yeah,
for sure. Like, that's what the family's called.
I love the progression of the masks that we get over the course of, like, not only just with this one, but obviously the sequels, they get wilder and wilder as it goes on. But you know, I think that's like one of the standout features. You know, you guys were saying that he almost feels like, in some ways, sort of like a weapon that the family sicks on people or protects the home. He kind of feels like a junkyard dog in a lot of ways, you know, sick him in one direction to protect the home. But yeah, I mean, I can't think of a whole lot of other horror figures that take on these different personas, basically, as needed, or based on certain emotions that Leatherface is experiencing.
Yeah.
So for you guys, why do you think this film has remained so influential all these decades later?
I think for all the things that we said, I think it set the bar
Mm-hmm.
on how effective horror movies can be, and I think we're gonna get into part two and stuff, but I mean, think about how many there's been, and how in reality, like there's the handful that are actually good is very low. And it's just almost like they can't really recreate that magic. And maybe
No.
it just didn't need to be recreated because it was so different. It's not the standard, slasher that we see. And I don't know if they're trying to take it to that level or not. Where it goes from here, I don't know. But I really was not a fan of the last one. I think like the 3D one, like it can pass for me. I think it would have been a lot better if they could figure out like what freaking time they're in. Like I think Adam Marcus said that like this was supposed to be in the 90s, like the cell phone shit and all that CGI dates that the studio went and did all that. He said that wasn't part of it. And the problem is now nobody knows what year this is supposed to take place in. And I think that really, threw a lot off for that movies because it's following this girl from the first one, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, she should be 19 or whatever. But then all of a sudden this cop's running around with, FaceTime and stuff like that. And you're like, what time frame is this? Like nothing makes any sense. I think it had potential. I think the studio, for whatever reason, needed that scene in there where the cop had the cell phone. And I really think it threw a lot off. I thought that was one of the better ones. I think the remake is pretty good. I think even the prequel remake is pretty good. Part 2 is good. And I think, that's kind of it. Like it's a lot of them just become forgettable.
You don't like Get 'Em Cuz? Get him, cuz.
They said too. He said that wasn't part of the script either. They added that. Studio wanted them to add that in.
I don't know that we even joke about that in our group chat. It's just so ridiculous. And
do your thing, cuz.
But Garrett, do your thing, cuz that's what it is. Yeah.
But Garrett, you're right, because that was one of the things I was so confused on first watch with that film is like, when is this actually supposed to be taking place? I have no clue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
At half the movie, you're like, oh, it's definitely this time frame, and then all of a sudden they show the tombstone and the dates are all skewed, and you can tell that those dates were like CGI in there. Like they covered what it was supposed to say and added their own thing. They threw one scene with like the cell phone thing, and it was like, wow, you could have just cut up two things and had this at least make somewhat of like a timeline sense. But I don't know. That's the problem when studios get involved sometimes, I guess.
Crazy.
Yeah. I think the movie too, the longevity it has is nothing had been done like this before.
No.
I mean, I think of movies like Psycho. Nothing had been done like that before. That was a pivot in what can be done and what can be shot and shown to people. Psycho. Now you have Texas Chainsaw, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can argue Halloween was another movement going towards that. And that's why all those movies have so many there's so many movies after that and directors and writers that call back to those movies as inspiration because they were the first to do it.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys were saying earlier, I don't think anything has come close to this. And, unfortunately, I feel like that they've tried to replicate the success of the first one so many times. And I think it just goes to show how influential the first one was, due to them being more misses than hits. And I mean, obviously, I think for each of us, we've seen this movie a number of times now at this point. How do you guys feel like it compares to your first time watching it? Do you still get that uncomfortable, uneasy feeling every time you watch it? Or do you think that some of that has kind of dissolved over time?
For me,
it's effective.
Yeah. I would say there's parts where it doesn't hit as hard for me because I know it, but I always go back to that dinner scene, and it never fails to just make you feel very uncomfortable, no matter how many times you watch it.
Absolutely. And we got that gorgeous Second Sight box set.
Oof,
I feel like that's going to be the definitive version of that film. Oh my gosh.
I don't know, but I did want to pull out this one just for
hold on.
Just for the barbecue version. There's a barbecue release in here, which it's ridiculous. But anyways, no, the Second Sight one is, all the other ones are awesome. I do love those. But if you're getting for like one, just in one package, just
For
one
sure.
and done, you know, I mean, you can't beat that. And then the other ones are
No.
just fun stuff. And I'm not knocking them. I wish I had them. So
Well, listen, we're gonna have to pivot here. We're going from the sweaty roads of Texas, or the rusted blades. I don't know whatever else Texas has, in the first one, but we're gonna pivot. We're gonna be talking about some cosmic horror and space vampires with none other than Life Force.
ooh,
Hell yeah. We all got a different edition.
there you go.
Well, where does this one rank for you guys? Are you guys fans of Life Force? Is this one that you feel like is up there for you as far as out of Hooper's not discography, filmography?
This might be a hot take, to be honest. This movie is the one I've seen the least out of his library.
No way.
I've probably only seen Life Force twice in my whole life. I think it's fine. I probably need to rewatch it more. Like, I really don't have the same kind of memory for this as I do everything else. And I think it really does just go back to my uncle. He never brought this one up. And I think for a while, this might have been a real hard, correct me if I'm wrong, this could have been a very hard DVD to find. I think when this was released, it was a huge deal that this was coming out. And if anybody in the chat knows, for some reason, I don't think I owned this. I don't believe on DVD before this. So, for me, this was probably the first time I'd ever seen this movie was when this Blu-ray came out. And like I said, like I didn't get the 4K or anything like that. It's just not one that I go crazy for. But to be fair, I also think it's one that maybe I have to give a couple more chances to really fall in love with it, because it does seem like a lot of people like love Life Force.
Did you hear about it before you had a chance to pick it up on Blu-ray, early on, or was it?
I heard about it because I think it was one that was a sought-after title.
Okay.
I'm pretty positive. I'd have to look and see what the cover art looks like, but for some reason, I do feel like it was one of those movies that was pretty sought after. So I always knew about it. It's just that I never had it, so I never was able to check it out before that.
Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, not very. Out of his filmography, for me, out of the films that I have and films we're talking about, it's the lowest out of them. This movie's just nuts, and I'm not bad thing about it, but it's just I actually did not see this movie until I picked this release up. I had never seen it.
What did you think? Did it was it what you were expecting, or
no? Of course
okay.
not. This movie
figured.
is you don't go into this movie expecting anything, because it's not going to be met. This is Tobe Hooper on drugs the whole movie, and just what I feel like with this movie, part of it he must have been writing as he was shooting, because he's like, okay, and then what's going to happen is they're going to become like these zombie people. And then they're going to become like these vampire. Oh, and then let's throw in Patrick Stewart in here as well for fun. That's kind of how I felt with this movie. It's a good movie. I feel like I'm giving it disservice to putting it at the lowest of my Tobe Hooper films that I have. Tobe Hooper is an incredible filmmaker, so it's still a great movie. Just compared to his other films, I prefer other ones.
I think the ones that we're talking about today, I feel like for me, it would be the lowest too. And I think, again, like you said, what really, I think the problem is that this was like the artwork that we got for such a long time. Now, what part of this draws you in? To me, this just looks like some generic sci-fi movie that is like everything else I've seen, right?
Totally.
Like there was nothing about this artwork or cover that drew me in to be like, oh, this is going to be about vampires and zombies. And like, there was nothing about that. So I think as well, it was one of those ones that it just never jumped out at me as like must see. And because, my uncle wasn't praising it like he was all these other movies we're going to talk about today, it just kind of fell to the wayside. And I think, like I said, the DVD, I think, was really hard to come by for a while. And it just became one of those things that I'm like, I'll see it eventually. But when this did come out was a big deal. And I know there's still issues with the cuts of the movie and stuff. Like, I don't know if this has multiple cuts on here. I don't. Oh, it does. The theatrical and the longer director approved. What's the issue with this? Wasn't there a big thing with like finally getting the right cut of this movie?
Yeah, because I remember with the 4K, I think it was the Scream Factory one on 4K that only had the theatrical cut, and then Arrow had the international and theatrical in 4. I'm pretty sure in 4K. Um, my understanding was I believe I've only seen the international cut, but that one is the one that I feel like is the more preferred, from my understanding.
This one has 2 cuts. It says the Blu-ray contains both theatrical and longer director cut. But are you saying that the 4K did it not have the other cut in 4K, or was it wasn't on there at all?
It wasn't. I think for the Scream Factory one, it was only the theatrical.
Well, I thought the Scream Factory had the 4K of the Scream Factory, had the theatrical cut on 4K, but it didn't have the internet. Well, they're calling it the international cut on this Arrow release, but they didn't have the longer cut on 4K. It was just Blu-ray.
Oh, maybe you're right.
And then it wasn't until Arrow came out and they were able to put both cuts, both. Let me look here. Yeah, both on 4K.
Oh, maybe you're right. I never had the Scream Factory one.
Yeah, neither did I. So, I don't know.
Well,
it's a good question.
Is there a certain moment or sequence that stood out to you, or for either of you guys, is the most memorable or bizarre? Because I
remember nothing about this movie except the girl's naked. Like
that, there you go. The whole first.
Like I'm not going to be.
Is that a bad thing? I don't know.
Because like that overshadows like anything else about this movie that I can remember.
That's the whole memorable part of the movie.
Yeah,
Jordan, I thought you said you were dressing up as Matilda May for this last
Hey,
year.
look,
What happened?
It was going to get a little chilly. Hey, you guys said bring stuff that we have for each movie, and I don't have much for Life Force. So I was like, you know what? I'll cosplay as Matilda May. But that scene, obviously, of her walking around, butt-ass naked through, 90% of the movie. But also, I specifically remember when they had that guy tied down. And when he wasn't able to, basically, it's been a while since I've seen this, but I know they're like space vampires. So they need these bodies, these people to keep living. He sucks up and dies.
Yeah.
I do remember that scene. I do remember the ending scene when they're like going up, beaming them up, Scotty type of thing going on. But that's about it.
I think it's pretty wild because I would have to say probably out of all of his films, this one feels like the biggest in scope. And I remember the first time watching it, the beginning feels like it's such an intimate, you're obviously in space, it's isolated, you feel very claustrophobic when they're first encountering the space vampires and Matilda May and all of her, stunning glory. And then as the film progresses onwards, it feels like the scope just continues to get bigger and bigger, where it's almost like on this global scale. I don't really feel like we really had anything that was that large in scope with any of his other films. I mean, maybe Salem's Lot, but that's just in a town.
Yeah, Life Force, like I said, it just feels like, and I could be wrong, it feels like he was writing the movie as he was filming. He just decided he just wanted to add more and more, and I have an idea, let's add this, let's add this, and it just became this very kind of convoluted kind of story.
Well, kind of speaking of which, I mean, the film, I would have to say, feels almost dreamlike and disjointed at times. Do you feel like that adds to its appeal, or do you think it hurts it for like the overall movie?
I got nothing. I mean, what I'm going to get out of this is I'm going to watch this as soon as we're done tonight.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Because I feel like I can't believe I have nothing much to say about this. And I'm looking at even the back of the pictures and I'm like, I kind of remember some of this.
I think like the dreamlike imagery that it has throughout it. I mean, at least for me, I love the fact that he took some big swings in this movie. It's definitely, I think, pretty far out there as far as his other films. I think that's what I love about it so much. It definitely has more of like a unique take on the space vampires concept, because I know we've had, we'll talk about a more traditional style film coming up here, but I mean, how many other movies I think have tackled it in this way? And I think that's what stands out to me. It's such a unique approach to what you could do with a vampire concept.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. It's definitely hasn't, hadn't been done. This was definitely something different for sure.
What do you guys think about the practical effects or the surreal imagery? Do you think that that holds up on repeat viewings? Maybe not for Garrett, but
I mean, from what I remember watching this, yeah, I think so. Like I said, I'm going back to that shot of the guy being held down. I mean, kind of just shriveling up to dust. Yeah, I mean, it looked pretty good.
And would you consider this one of Hooper's more underrated films?
I think it's got a very cult following now. I feel like I hear more people excited about Life Force now than I ever had before.
For sure.
And I don't know if it was, getting that Blu-ray from Screen Factory and then getting, the 4K and then Arrow doing it. Now it's got this big box, I think Imprint did. So I think it's
right.
really, yeah. So I think it's really one that people are talking a lot more about. And I think the lore of just this other, alternate cut, maybe that's what it was with the DVD. Maybe that it was that you didn't get that cut. So when it finally came out, I think a lot of people were excited for it because it was something that, we hadn't seen on physical media before. So I do think it's really kind of popped in popularity. I hear more about this than Eaten Alive, and growing up, Eaten Alive was like a staple, and Life Force didn't exist to me. So I think it's really kind of got its cult following now.
Well, especially, I mean, it kind of reminds me of how The Keep, I mean, Vinegar Syndrome put that back in the spotlight. You had that, or 2 releases from them, and then you had Imprint that did the collector's edition box set. So. I completely forgot that Imprint had done a box set for this film as well, which is pretty remarkable. All right, well, we're moving right along, and this one I think is this one I didn't really have as much to reflect on because it wasn't one that I found out about early on getting into Tobe Hooper's films, but that's none other than The Funhouse. Oh, look at that. So what memories do you guys have with this movie? Because I think this might almost be like the equivalent of maybe like Life Force, and not having as much watch time with it. But did you guys discover this one kind of early on, or?
I did, yes, and it was, again, my uncle's the same way. A lot of these, he's the one that like pushed on me. It was like, oh, you like Texas Chainsaw? Watch Eaten Alive. Oh, you like Eaten Alive? Wow, you're a Tobe Hooper guy, so let's watch. You got to watch Funhouse. I mean, that's incredible, and I love Funhouse, man. I love it, and like, there's not a lot of Screen Factory stuff because I had like all the Blu-ray collector's editions. I was there kind of since day one. What I kind of like about these two is it's got those old artworks, but it's got all those, like, they used to come with promo stickers back then. That's kind of like telling you, what's in here. I always thought that was kind of cool, but it is one of the ones, as soon as they announced the 4K, I jumped all over it. And there's not a lot of, Screen Factory ones that I did that for right away. So it just shows how much I do really enjoy this movie a lot. And I think what it is, I'm a sucker for carnival stuff. Like, I really, really am. Like, anything that takes place in some kind of amusement park or carnival, I'm a huge sucker for, especially when you add horror to it. And this movie is a fucking crazy time. I remember that shocking moment when he takes that mask off, that Frankenstein mask, man. Like, that is one of those moments that I feel like I'll never forget, because I didn't know it was coming,
For sure.
I'm sitting there as, 20 years old, 19 years old, and have this on DVD, and all of a sudden that scene comes, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? It's a wild one. You definitely, you get to kind of see what that carny life was like. Everybody's like, are they related? Are they not? What they will do for money. And it's just a real cool time, and having them trapped in the carnival and then the Funhouse. I love this one. I think it's simple but effective.
Jordan, what about you?
So this was a fairly recent watch for me. I didn't grow up with this movie at all, but that being said, I really enjoyed this one. It's nuts. It's fun. Her younger brother, I think he's one of my favorite characters of this movie, cracks me up. I mean, the whole nod to Halloween and kind of Psycho both at the opening shot of the film. Like Garrett said, the monster reveal, the noise he makes, man, his like roar, yeah. And then how one of the other carnies, like you said, what they would do for money, how she was, you know, trying to get a little money from it. It just it's
It's
crazy.
wild. Like,
You know what I
he
mean?
would spend all his money and like, fuck her
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
What are you doing wasting your money on that?
No,
Yours, man?
this is a lot of fun. I really do enjoy this one a lot. Like I said, this was a very recent watch for me, so not a lot of tons of memories with this,
For sure.
but it definitely it definitely I really did enjoy it a lot.
Man, you guys now have me wanting to go back and rewatch this one because I think this is the one that I've seen the least. And let me ask you guys, I mean, what makes the carnival setting for this film feel so unsettling compared to, your typical horror locations that we normally see?
Well, I mean, have you been to a carnival? You know what I mean? It's nuts. The type of characters you run into, I think carnies in general, you just can't trust them for
No,
the most
Whole
part,
different
right?
lifestyle,
Yeah.
Exactly. I almost said akin it to the hitchhiker, right? He's so unpredictable. That's how
sure.
I see carnies are. They will do. They're very unpredictable. They will do anything they can to grab a buck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the carnival scene, there's just so many possibilities with all the dark rides they've got there. The music just adds to it, to the atmosphere. It's just, and it's creepy.
Yeah.
Clowns are creepy, and carnival, there's clowns there, and that's why I don't mess
sure.
with that. So, I think it's a great spot for a horror story is a carnival.
Garrett, what about you?
I think too, with me loving the carnival stuff is it brings me back again, showing my age. But I mean, I remember being a kid and either with my parents and going to carnivals, and you kind of get that, like, you smell the popcorn or the candy or whatever, and you're walking around. It's kind of like a brisk night, maybe in the fall or spring or summer. And it just had a cool feel. It's like that. It's just not anything I experience anymore. I don't even know if there's like real carnivals like this out anymore. But when I was a kid, it was something to do where you'd go with your family, or then when I got a little bit older, you'd go with your friends and just kind of walk around and go on these different rides and stuff. And the whole thing just brings me back to a time that I feel like doesn't really exist anymore. And watching this, it almost gives me that kind of cozy feeling of like how things were back then, and where something like a carnival was like the thing to do on a Friday night for teenagers. Like, oh, let's go to the carnival and, cause trouble and, walk around and meet girls or whatever it may be. And having all these weird people that are working there on top of it. And I just really do think it's the type of environment I really, like to explore. And when you add horror elements to it and what goes on behind the scenes, I think really, makes this a little bit scary. And all of a sudden now everything's dark, everything's shut down, and you're stuck there and nobody knows that's where you are. And you're trying to figure out how the heck to get out of this thing.
It's so scary.
You've got those carnival creatures, right? You go to carnivals, you hear about, they have these creatures on display. That what happens, like Garrett said, what happens after night with those things? It's a scary thought.
For sure. And I mean, for the setting, does it make the film feel more immersive or more surreal for you guys?
I think it makes it feel like a little bit tighter. And I also, you think of different horror movies, you're like, oh, you got Dawn of the Dead, it takes place in the mall. You got Funhouse, it takes place in the carnival. Like, I just think having these different settings that you can bring these stories to, really effective. And if you guys haven't seen, there's another really cool horror movie that takes place, a lot of it in the carnival. And that's that movie. Is that how we say it?
I saw you do a video of that.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's like 6 S's.
Oh,
so like I always thought it was a funny thing because like
I thought
it's
the live stream was like glitching or something when you were saying
but
that.
like like how weird is that? Like I think the other version was called like Snake, like with like 5 S's and Snake, but in the States it was just so I always would wonder, like, what did you say like when you want to go to the theater to see that? Like, I'll do 3 for how you say, like, it's weird, but it's a cool ass movie. If you guys haven't seen it, it does have a Blu-ray from Scream Factory, and it's definitely another carnival horror movie that I think people should check out. It's really cool.
From 73. Okay.
Yeah. Have you seen Vampire Circus?
That's another cool one. That's a Hammer. That's one of like the only Hammer movies I had seen for a long time. That was the first Hammer movie that I really had seen. And again, it was one of those ones that my uncle was like, oh, you like Funhouse? Check out this thing, you know, like,
Okay.
so Vampire Circus is one that I do enjoy as well.
Nice.
So, how do you guys feel like Tobe Hooper turns a place meant for obviously fun into something claustrophobic and dangerous? I mean, were there certain sequences or maybe, you know, what scenes stuck out to you guys the most in the film?
Definitely the reveal, I think, is the biggest one for me. Um, yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest. That whole scene where they're kind of looking down, and you know,
Mhm.
he's in there with the mask on, talking to the guy. Then the girl shows up. Like that whole scene of them just kind of watching this kind of unfold, I think is the strongest scene in the movie for sure.
Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, no, I would agree. All the scenes of the kids kind of trying to stay hidden is very claustrophobic. When they're kind of in
I
the
would agree.
walls and just sitting there waiting, watching. Then when they find out they're there and they're starting to hunt them, you know, then now them trying to hide even more.
You know, and Steve brought this up earlier where Life Force kind of felt like a big, like it was bigger than a lot of his movies. Like it felt, and I feel like this one falls in with Texas Chainsaw, Eaten Alive, Funhouse. Like they're all in that kind of like that dirty, gritty,
Totally.
and where Life Force and another one we're going to talk about to me feels a little bit bigger. Oh, look at that. He likes, doesn't
Yeah. That's too funny. So what do you guys think that makes Gunther feel so disturbing? Is it his appearance, his behavior, or like the mystery surrounding him?
I still, I'm trying to think. Like I've seen this so many times. Like, did they ever explain what he was? Was he just a product of that carny life? Like,
I
what
don't know if I want
exactly
to know.
was he?
He's
Did
like
they say?
I don't know the way his face is, and it's like right. Look, it's split.
Yeah.
Almost has like a Siamese twin experiment gone wrong. That's kind of how the feel you get. For me, it's just the scream. His scream is
Yeah.
always what sticks out to me at the end.
I always thought to myself, how the hell did he get that head in that mask? I always thought that too.
Takes a little bit of finessing
tight
before he
fit
puts it
right
on.
there.
Well, yeah, but you know, I've always wanted that exact like Frankenstein mask from this movie. I always wanted that exact mask, but you know, then you're looking at it and you're like, did they ever even make that mask, or did they have to? Because it's wide, you know, because he's wearing it, so it's got kind of stretched out, so it's a really weird looking mask, and I think it's just because of that head that was under there. But yeah, I don't know if it was made specifically for the movie or if that was like a mask that you could have bought, you know, around this time. But I've always been searching online to see if anybody ever did a rep or anything like that about it for it.
But it's crazy too because Rick Baker was the one who designed the mask
Mhm.
for Gunther, so it's pretty remarkable. I mean, I feel like it. You know, we go back with any of these films, and for the most part, a lot of these special effects, it's crazy to see how they hold up. Maybe some more than others. And then, did you guys feel like there were like themes of like, let's say, voyeurism or exploitation, or maybe the darker side of entertainment that you picked up on in the Funhouse?
100%, I think. Like Jordan was saying too, it's like people in this environment are weird, and you kind of get to see behind the curtain of like what's really going on in that life, you know?
Yeah. Another recent film that I think of, and it was a hit or miss for some people, but Nightmare Alley.
Okay.
A Del Toro film that takes place. It's the whole story is the carny life, and yeah, there's some questionable stuff that takes place within the life of a carny. And if you guys haven't seen that, I do enjoy that. There's a Criterion 4K that came out not too long ago.
I like the one that came out a couple of years ago was it Bradley Cooper, that one?
Yeah.
I
He's
like
the
that
mentalist.
movie, and I usually, you know, on paper, I don't feel like I would have liked it, but I remember watching it and being like, "Wow, that was really good." I think I bought a Steelbook 4K or something like that because I really did enjoy that one. And there's another movie called Carney with Gary Busey. That's another one to check out for sure.
Well, we're gonna pivot. We're gonna kind of move to more of the, I would say, the suburban family setting for this next film that we're gonna talk about. And that is none other than Poltergeist. Look at that. So I know you guys had talked about this film. I would say probably, what is this a film that you guys saw early on, right? I know Jordan, you had said that. Garrett, was that the case for you?
Oh yeah. Again, like this to me, I always think of Poltergeist as it was dedicated to kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, the years I grew up, Poltergeist was like, we'd be renting that and Gremlins at the video store, under the age of 10 and getting the shit scared out of us. Which I don't, this wouldn't be a movie I would show a kid now, but that's what we were exposed to in the 80s. It was, Gremlins, and even I think Red Dawn was like PG or something. It's a pretty damn violent movie. But yeah, like Poltergeist was definitely a gateway horror movie for me, no doubt.
It feels like, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like a perfect entry point if you're trying to get someone, maybe someone a little bit younger that's into horror, and you're obviously not trying to throw Texas Chainsaw at them. I feel like that this is like the perfect film that it's like scary but not too scary, I think, in a lot of ways. I always remember this film as being like a definitive summer movie to watch. I don't know why that time of year I start getting back into like the Goonies and Indiana Jones and Jaws and films like that around that time. But Jordan, how about you? What was your experience with this one?
Yeah, this was a movie that so there's very few horror movies that my grandparents were, they're not horror fans at all. Very few though that they would always talk about, and I was able to see with them. One was Christine. They loved Christine. My grandmother always talked about Christine. That was her movie. But the other one was Poltergeist. And that was Dad really liked that movie too. I just remember at a young age, the clown. I think that's the one. A lot of kids will remember.
Under the bed,
the bell, hearing the bell, right? You hear the bell, and then the arm, and it wraps around him. The tree, of course, I remember as a kid. And then when they fall into the pool, and the skeletons start coming up after them,
and then more about how that scene was actually filmed. It makes it that much more traumatic.
Right, exactly. But one thing I always, even like now looking at it, like I can't say this, I don't have any kids, but I would feel like, what kind of parent is like cool with a Poltergeist, boot scooting their baby across the kitchen floor? You know what I mean? It's wild to me. But no, this movie, I have a lot of good memories as a kid watching this movie. It was one of those that was just kind of just around when I was a kid, played, whether it be on TV or, that was mainly when it was watched, whether it was on TV or not. But it was just somehow it was always being played.
I always remember the scene where the parents are in the bedroom, they're just blazing up, and I'm like, this makes so much more sense why all this shit's happening in the house. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, but there's some awesome scenes though. When she is being thrown around on the ceiling, on the wall. It's very Nightmare on Elm Street. So,
oh gosh, and with this, I mean, what makes the suburban setting feel so safe then so terrifying? I mean, is it just that it could really happen to any of us, you think? Or what was it? What stood out to you guys with this one?
I'll go back to what I said about loving movies taking place in the carnival. What I love more is movies taking place in suburbia. I think that's like literally like my favorite subgenre of horror is suburban horror, because this, like, the neighborhood setting is what exactly I grew up in. So like when I watch The Burbs, like I think to myself, that's like the street I lived in. And so watching these movies, Fright Night's the same thing. Like I feel like I'm there.
It's like nostalgia.
100%, like everything about it, just that little street, houses everywhere. You're not sure what's going on in certain houses. Like it just really hits home with me. And I love every minute of that kind of setting. And I think that's what it is. It's like you feel safe, but you don't know what's going on behind those closed doors of people that are living on that neighborhood. You remember we're going out for Halloween, and there was always that one neighbor that would shut the lights off, and you never got to see what was going on in that house.
I didn't want to know.
Or somebody opens the door and they're like, trick or treat, and you look behind them and you're like, holy shit, why is this house full of garbage? Like,
Yeah.
like big dogs and stuff. I'm like, what the hell
Yeah.
happens in this house? You know?
Oh,
And
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of, what makes these movies cool is that you never know who's living next door to you,
For
and
sure.
you think it's one way, but you don't know what's going on behind those doors. And it really does have that, like you said, that safe but kind of scary feel when you really think about it.
Well, that I think that's what if we're comparing, the carnivals and suburbia and all that stuff. On paper, these are supposed to be very safe. These are supposed to
Mhm.
be the suburbs. That's where these families with kids and where they would go to be around other families with kids. It's supposed to be, let's have a a street potluck. Everyone get together. That's what you think of, and then when you throw a horror spin on it, that now you're thinking, oh, well, okay, this could happen. Like,
Yeah.
like Garrett said, you don't know what's going behind, your neighbor's door or in their backyard. You always hear, you go to bed at night and you always hear something that your neighbor's doing next door. And now you're thinking, what, you come up with these stories. I did as a kid. You had a neighbor that was up at all hours of night. Who knows what they're doing?
Oh, for
Right?
sure.
You might think you have a vampire living next door. You know what I mean? So who knows?
That's true. So, how do you guys feel like the poltergeists in this film feel different from your typical ghosts that we see in movies?
It gets you where like the electronics, the television. I mean, that talk about something that you feel like, oh shit, this can get me at any time. Like, this is just something these are things that are in your house
Mhm.
and that are staples in the house that you need. And all of a sudden now you're like, wow, these things can hurt me. I think that's really effective because it really just goes back to, like we talked about before, it could happen in anybody's house, because everybody's got the television, everybody's got a microwave and all this other stuff. So I think that it really just does hit home in a way that maybe other filmmakers at the time weren't thinking about. And I think this falls in the same vein, like you said, with Life Force, is that this shows what else Toby can do. Like, this
Mhm.
feels bigger. This feels bigger budget. This feels like his, you want to compare it with Spielberg and stuff, but that's what this feels like, is that his version of, Spielberg movie. And when you look at a lot of his other ones, Eaten Alive, Funhouse, Texas Chainsaw, it's very small. It's very kind of like rough around the edges. This one feels grand, and it just shows what kind of range Toby really had.
For sure. I was going to say it feels like the most tightly focused film that he has out of his filmography, where I feel like every scene, every sequence, every cue is equally important, and I don't feel like that this is a movie that you would really have to trim any fat on. And I think you're right. I mean, in a lot, I know obviously Steven Spielberg had a hand on this, but it feels like very much he's pushing his range in a different direction compared to something like Life Force.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how groundbreaking do you feel like the practical effects in this film were for the time that it was released?
When I was a kid, it was big because I'd never
Mhm.
seen a lot like that. The movies that I was watching didn't have anything like this before. So to me, this felt groundbreaking. This felt like, something I'd never seen before. But I still think it works. Like,
Mhm.
I think that, we've talked about it before with the less is more, but like some of these effects, they're great. And I mean, there was no CGI used here to create this stuff. And I think it's still very effective in like a less is more type of situation, like we
For
talked about
sure.
before.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I mean, we're going practical effects. You have, the face being torn off. I mean, that was,
Oh,
we're talking about
gnarly.
good practical. I mean, those were incredible. But there is a less is more. Simple as ground beef, or was it a steak, right? Shimmying across the kitchen counter. Just camera tricks where you see a kitchen table, you pan away, look back, and the chairs are stacked.
Yeah.
It's little things like
Creepy.
that. Yeah, that it's not, you can get away with a lot with this film. The way they did it, it was very, very, very clever.
The face peeling scene, I I on rewatch, I look back at that scene and I'm like, how would this fly for kids seeing this? I remember that scarred me when I saw that.
Mhm.
Obviously you think you're watching something that's a little bit more accessible for, you know, uh like a younger kids movie, but It definitely, I think, pushed the envelope as far as, what they were, showing, a younger audience. Now for you guys, which scene remains the most iconic and why?
Oh, they're here. I mean,
Mhm.
her sitting at the TV. You
Yeah.
know, that's to me the most iconic. It's been, I mean, it's been replicated, spoofed on, I don't know how many times.
For sure.
It's used in marketing. I mean, that to me, I think that is the most iconic, most standout part of this movie is, is her. And I think what adds to the lore of this movie is that actress, the
Oh,
terrible,
terrible.
what happened with her. And from what if you've
Her
heard
and the sister.
right, and you hear stories of stuff that happened on set.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was some bad juju going on, during the production of this movie. So I think that just adds to the lore and to the mysticism of this movie.
Mhm.
Well, it was, I believe, like they run into problems on production for all three films, if I recall correctly. I know for
Yeah,
sure with the first
I
one.
think that they did on all of them. Yeah.
Terrible. We got Stacy joining us. What's up, Stacy?
What's going on?
What up?
And Stacy's asking, what monster do you get to guard your physical media collection? Dude, I'm gonna get Gunther. With a face like that, nobody's gonna be touching that.
My pet monster. I get guard mine.
I'm going for I got to go with Fluffy.
Okay. All right. Look at that. Nice diverse group. Yeah, I would definitely have to say, I mean, if I'm talking about one iconic scene that I think of, it would have to, the scene with her being right near the television. And I still think about that pool scene. That pool scene, after knowing more about, like, how they filmed it and everything, that just creeps me out that much more. Now, for you guys, why has Poltergeist remained such an iconic horror film decades later?
For me, I think it was just the gateway of what it was. There was a lot more gateway horror movies that were dedicated to kids. Like we talked about Gremlins and stuff before that came out
Sure.
in the 80s, where, it stands out to me because it was a movie that all the kids, in school were watching and then
Mhm.
coming to school and being like scared to death, that these movies were out there. And I think that was just a telling of why some of these movies, like, I think my generation especially has such a crazy love for nostalgia. And I think it's just those moments of, there was no phones, there was none of this stuff. And you rented that tape or went to the theater or whatever and sat down and watched this thing for the first time. And it was like, there was nothing else going on
Sure.
except your eyes right on that. And it scarred you in a way, and I think that's unfortunately what's missing. Is I think sometimes things are taken for granted now, and not even just with kids, but I also think in Hollywood and stuff too. Is like when you look at some of these movies, you're like, man, the time, effort, thought to going into like this story and how they made it all work. It's kind of unbelievable. And it's sad that I feel like it really can't get replicated anymore for some reason.
No, I feel like that there's just so many options available, and it's like there's so many things going on in our daily lives that kind of distract our attention from really dialing in. I mean, Garrett, you were talking about this. I'm sure, back at that point, it's like when you're sitting down to watch this, you don't have cell phones, you don't have, tablets or, distractions that way. So to just be able to be dialed in and actually appreciate the movie for what it is, definitely, I feel like it's more of a special experience. Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, why you ask why it's so iconic and stood the test of time?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I think this was the type of horror movie that non-horror people went and saw at the time.
Yep.
This was, and I think the perfect example, like I talked about with my grandparents, they didn't watch horror movies, but this movie they did. This was the horror movie that everyone saw. And I think Spielberg being attached to it probably had something to do with it. At the time, and just kind of the way it's shot, it's done in a family. It's centers around a family. Okay, that a lot of people go see a movie centered around a family
For sure.
in a safe neighborhood. It's and the marketing to kids too. I mean, that's going to push a lot of people to go see it more, I think, than if they're saying, oh, okay, let's say they came out the same day,
Mhm.
right? Texas Chainsaw or the Poltergeist. One's about a chain wielding monster. The other one's about a poltergeist. This movie's for kids. This one's most people are going to go see the poltergeist.
Sounds like
So I
my
think-
perfect double feature.
right. So I think that's one of the reasons why, at the time everyone went and saw it. Therefore, they all showed their kids. Whereas Texas Chainsaw Massacre, not everyone saw that, so they didn't have the chance, for the most part, to pass it down. And I'm picking on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it stood the test of time for different reasons.
For sure.
But I think that's one of the main things, is just because how accessible, to use Garrett's terms or Garrett's words, was the Poltergeist.
I feel like another one that I always think of that's a little bit more accessible is Jaws. That was a horror movie that I saw very early on, and obviously it has elements of action and adventure, but more importantly, I feel like the horror element is really like underneath it all, that it's really terrifying if you think about it. And I think for a lot of us, seeing that film, whether you were younger at the time or whenever, but I definitely feel like it created that fear of being out in the open water, and in a setting that is, I think, a little bit more foreign compared to something like this. And the last thing I was going to ask you guys is how do you feel like this film compares to the other classics of the early 80s?
I think it fits right in, and I want to take a little bit of what you said about Jaws. I saw that early too, and I think especially when I was a kid, like the rating system was still kind of being tweaked, and I think parents back then, at least mine did, they held the rating system to a high standard on like what I was and was not allowed to watch.
For sure.
Like, they really did. And there was a lot of kids, when I talked to now, that were like, I was watching, Hills Have Eyes when I was 4, like I wasn't one of those kids. So like I had to progressively get into horror, even though my uncle in the back, the back end was kind of always pushing it towards me. Oh, check out, look at Jason, and he'd buy me like a Freddy Krueger, figure and stuff. But like my parents weren't letting me watch that stuff. So the movies that were really getting me interested in horror were things like Gremlins, like Poltergeist, Jaws. But the reason is that in reality, I'm like, I probably shouldn't have been watching some of those movies, but Jaws had a PG rating, right? So like, so in my parents' head, they're like, oh, PG, he can watch this. And when you look at it now, like the rating system was so skewed at the time because there was no PG-13 for a while, and they had to like add that in. So there was this big gap where they didn't want me to watch things I wasn't supposed to watch, but at the same time, I was watching things that I don't think a kid at 6 and 7 years old should be watching now. Like I look at Jaws and I'm looking PG and I'm like, I can't believe this was something that I was watching at like 6.
Oh, I remember the first time watching that, it was almost like I was terrified, but that feeling that you get, especially very early on when you're discovering some of these movies, nothing ever comes close to that. And it's almost like you're always like, even now up until this point, it's like you're always chasing that high for that next horror film that will really scare you, or have you thinking about it after you've left the theater, whatever the case is. But I definitely feel like with Poltergeist, it's definitely a little bit more of an accessible horror film. And speaking of something that I feel like for the time, I wonder how accessible this miniseries, as well as in different formatting, it's as a movie as well. But what about Salem's Lot? Ooh. I feel like this one's getting a lot of love right now with the recent 4K from Arrow. Very nice,
dude. This edition's so good.
Oh my god,
it's incredible. I mean,
I've been buzzing since I watched it,
dude. This might be my favorite release. It could hold it.
I agree. I think it's right up there. It's an incredible release. The look of it from a package standpoint just looks so slick. The quality is incredible. I don't know if you saw my review, but I mean, I'd seen this movie so many times. So for me to come out of this, so excited at getting giddy over it,
it looks stunning.
Telling because you're getting. I never saw the theatrical cut ever until this release. Like I have the VHS tape, but I didn't get that VHS tape until recently. Someone had gotten it for me. I only had the double one that you have, which is the miniseries. And is that what is that a double miniseries or is that both?
No, this is just like the movie. I think it's the condensed one for this.
Oh, that's not the big box?
No.
It looks like a double.
Yeah, package. No, I still need to get that one because I know that's the preferred way that I like watching it, to be honest. But Um, man, I'll tell you one thing that I can truly appreciate about this mini series is just how immersive and atmospheric it is, and especially for the time. I kept thinking about it when I was watching the 4K. I'm like, man, this is really held up, and I think that it really nails that sense of dread that I got from the book when I read it, a while back. Um, does a great job at fleshing out all the characters. What about you guys? I mean, I know obviously, we all got the 4K recently, but did you guys feel that way having a chance to watch it again?
Oh yeah.
I've always thought of this movie as a masterpiece, and
Yep.
I've always championed this movie because it was championed to me again by my uncle. He used to tell me stories. He's like, I saw this in a 2-part series, when it aired on TV, and he'd always tell me that first night. His name's Mark, so all you can think about is the guy Mark. Let me. So he goes, I'm riding my bike home in the middle of the night. It's like
Fuck.
all I'm
that.
hearing is there's animals and crackling of the trees, and I'm hearing Mark, and I'm like riding as fast as I can home, thinking, holy shit, something's gonna get me. And he's like, to have that feeling and has been stuck in his head, like it put this movie on a pedestal for me. So when I watched it, I just appreciated it from start to finish. And I've heard a lot of people, because I've recommended this to a lot of people in the past, say it was slow and boring, and
No.
I just don't feel that way. Like I love slow burn horror movies if it's a good story and if there's a good payoff, and I think that's what this does so well. And I did watch the theatrical version for the first time, and I liked it because it does tighten it up a little bit for maybe people that think that. But after the whole story, you're like, holy shit, there's so much missing here. Like it doesn't flush out a lot. Like it feels like a Cliff Notes version of the movie. And in one way I can appreciate it. And there's also some different scenes, which I didn't even realize that they had made different scenes for that version. So for instance, I don't know if you guys know this, but the scene where he catches the guy with his wife and he's got the gun.
Yep.
And he brings him out and he puts the gun in his face. So the miniseries that I watched, he puts the gun to his face and then he goes to blow it up, blow his head off, and it clicks and he runs out. The theatrical version, he puts the barrel in his mouth. That doesn't happen on the miniseries. Yes. So like that is an edgier version because it was in theaters. They couldn't do that on television. So that clip that was the first time I'd ever seen that clip, when all of a sudden he's like, all right, open your mouth. He puts the barrel in there. So it's pretty cool that we finally have that, and they gave it the 4K treatment too. So, like I said, there's people that tell me that all the time, but like I told people in my review, don't sleep on the theatrical. If they look and they're like, oh, it's short, I'm not even going to watch it. Like there's different dialogue in there because they don't explain a lot that's going on. So there's different dialogue spit in there to kind of try to like catch you up. Like the whole ending's different in the theatrical than in the miniseries. And they try to explain it with like a couple hits of dialogue, and it doesn't really do it justice, but it's interesting to see how they maneuvered some stuff to try to make it all make more sense on the theatrical. So that's why I think it's just really cool that we have that now to kind of compare it.
Yeah, it's wild to me though, because and again, agree to disagree. Some out there aren't the biggest fan of this miniseries, or but I feel like the pacing, at least for me, and what I'm looking for, when I'm watching something, I felt like it was just enough like to keep you engaged and wanting to know more, like what's going on in this town. I mean, if I hadn't have read the book, obviously I would still be just as engaged with it, but man, it's I don't know. I just don't feel like you get, like, whether it's miniseries or, a movie for that matter, that's just, there's so much attention to detail, and everyone I feel like serves a purpose in this. Now, for you guys, what makes the town of Salem's Lot feel claustrophobic despite its size?
Well, that's a good question.
It's because they show you, they only show you certain landmarks, right? Like you're always either in the store or at the real estate office or at the woman's house or at the Marsden house. And so I think it keeps you kind of in a certain spot, even though it's a bigger place, but it always kind of keeps you in those different areas. And, you really do get to learn about these cast of characters that live in this town. And where you start to actually care about these people, and when things happen to them, it's like they all feel like, to me, they all feel like important characters, every
Sure.
one of them.
Yeah.
So they do a really good job, like kind of making you really care about these people. And when I think about the vibe and the tone of this movie and the way they kind of do it, I always think in my head, for some reason, like I feel like if you like this, you'd like the way Phantasm paces as well.
Oh,
I feel like it's
so
a very
good.
similar tone. And I actually think they did a very good job with Midnight Mass when it came to how they flushed that story. I don't know if you guys caught that at all, but that's one I would recommend big time as well.
That's one that actually went under the radar for me. I never had a chance
Yeah,
to check it out.
I
But
didn't check it out either.
do you feel like it's kind of similar in vein to something like Salem's Lot then? If you were to
100%.
recommend?
I
Okay.
feel like if I was to pick anything, especially modern, that resembles Salem's Lot, I would say Midnight Mass is that
Okay.
movie. Like it really does feel like a newer version of this movie. And I
Okay.
think that the Rob Lowe one is not bad. I don't know if you guys have seen that remake.
No.
It's not terrible. It's not
Okay.
terrible. It gets a lot of shit. I get it, but it's not bad. I've never read the book, so I can't.
It's so
Some
good.
people say the Rob Lowe one's a little bit more like the book, so
Yeah.
you kind of get a little bit of a different.
I'll have to check that
twist.
out.
I haven't read the book, but I know like Barlow, if I remember correctly, he's not this Nosferatu-esque vampire. He is from what I've heard, he looks like a human. This Kurt Barlow.
Yeah, I don't.
That's what I think I heard too. Yeah.
I from what I recall, I don't think it's the mini series and how the book describes him. I feel like it's a little bit different, their takes on it. Now for the mini series, do you feel like that it feels more like a slow burn style horror, or do you feel like it falls more in a traditional vampire story style?
To me, it's a little bit of both, maybe. It's definitely slow burn, but it is slow burn, but not in a bad way. It gives you time to breathe, learning about each of these characters, and like Garrett said, caring about each of these characters. And I think another point about King does this so well, but especially
Mhm.
with this, it's a middle class, blue collar type of horror film.
Yeah.
You've got that small town feel, right? The local store, the local haunted house, all that stuff. But
The hospital.
the hospital. I'm sorry. What was your question again? I want.
Oh no, I was just comparing it on. Does it feel more like a slow burn horror style,
I see.
miniseries,
Okay.
or more of a traditional vampire
But
story?
I think it is definitely slow burn, but it's definitely traditional vampire. The crucifix, the holy water. You got the opening shot of them trying to collecting the holy water.
In Guatemala.
In Guatemala. So it's definitely got its traditional vampire tropes in the movie.
Are there, and just throwing it out there, but are there other vampire movies that you feel like come close to this, or do you consider this one of like the more definitive vampire stories?
I always will have a soft spot for Fright Night. I think that's another masterpiece. It's a very
For sure.
different take on a vampire movie than your traditional. But growing up, I never was the biggest Bram Dracula person. Like everybody kind of praised it, and I was like, I don't know, I don't really like it. I watched that not too long ago, and I thought it was fantastic. I was like, I was so
For sure.
wrong about this movie, like my whole life. Like this is a real good adaptation of this story. So I could say that, but Salem's Lot is just, again, it has that feel of like this could happen, and if it's going to happen in the small town, like it feels real. And what this does so well, and we're talking about all my favorite shit here. We got carnivals, we got suburban, and I love TV horror movies from
Oh,
the
yeah.
70s, 80s. I freaking love it, because when you can get a movie that's interesting, that can actually scare you with like little to no gore or anything like that, like to me, that's the type of horror that I absolutely love. Like those scenes of just all of a sudden the guy's walking, you see a hand, and like that's all they show, and then you're like, shit, what the hell is that?
Cliffhanger.
Oh,
Yeah,
dude.
like I love that, and I also like the scene at the window with the kids scratching at like
Mhm.
it's so freaking good. And even when you meet Barlow for the first time, like that one scene where he shows up at the kitchen table,
Yeah.
and he's got the
Terrifying.
kid, and And he say? He's like, his faith for his fate or whatever. And then when they finally get to the house, what I noticed on the 4K, seeing this for this movie so many times, when they are in that house and they're walking around and they pan back, and I'm like, what a beautiful film this is. Like that house, and it's a cool scene where she's looking for him, and she's like, Mark, where are you? And she's on the bottom floor and she's looking around, and you see him kind of going across the top, and they don't see each other. It's a real cool way that they filmed that, where it's almost like that kind of old school, like, you're looking for somebody, they're up here, you're down there, they can't find you kind of thing. And seeing the detail on this 4K of this house, where like the staircase has mold on it, there's feathers on the floor, you see dusts kind of sprinkling down all the time from like the top floor. It's really a well done movie. I was watching this 4K and being like, how much did this fucking movie cost to make? Because it's a lot of work put into at least the inside of that house.
Yeah, the inside, I noticed like all the different decorations on the walls. You don't really notice it before it. Before it, to me, it was just kind of set pieces that were just kind of in passing. But yeah, I did notice definitely in the house. But yeah, it is genuinely a scary movie. Very scary scenes. And I had told Steve this earlier. I mean, everyone praises, rightfully so, the window scene. It was the way it was shot. It is very scary. But to me, man, the guy sitting in the chair, that whole like shot haunting. Of him sitting there staring at you with those eyes, that one, man, it's like him, peering into your soul, how it feels. It is scary. It's a scary movie.
I just think for this being a mini series, it just feels like Tobe Hooper was able to just basically get everything out of this that he possibly could. Like there's like nothing left when everything's all said and done, and it just feels so much larger than life with this miniseries compared to, I mean, I probably not the best reference, but I just watched like Jordan, I was telling you about the Lamberto Bava TV movies that I was watching, and like, while I have an affinity for cheap Italian horror, there's definitely a stark difference between the two with what you're getting with a TV movie like that versus something like this. Now, how do you guys think Barlow differs from classic vampires? Like, are there certain things about his character that stand out to you or make him memorable?
Well, he's blue.
Yeah, I love the look, even though he's a very Nosferatu looking guy. I mean, he doesn't, what the funny thing is, he's such an iconic character. And when he's on screen, he captures that scene, but he doesn't do much. Like, he's not really like you would think that he is. He's in like one big scene. Then they're basically dragging him out in the coffin and they kill him like right away. But, he makes every scene count. That thing where he's about to kill him and all of a sudden his head pops up and you just see it show
so
up there.
Creepy.
Like, that's scary, man. Like, he makes his screen time like matter. And that's what I think really makes him effective too, is not only is the look, it's a scary look, man. That's to me, that's one of the freakiest looking vampires ever. But he didn't have to do much, and it was still effective because I think the cast of characters in the movie around him made it work.
Well, he also doesn't speak. His roar, whatever. I was talking
like a snarl,
yeah, but if you listen, and it could be me, but it sounds like almost a sob, like a sawzall going off.
Oh, like when he stabs them and stuff, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds.
Yeah,
it's got like this, like it sounds like a saw is running, like every time he screams or whatever he does. And I thought, how funny, the guy who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right, puts a chainsaw in his voice. If that's what he meant to do, I don't know.
Well,
but
there are some homages to that. The feathers on the floor. They got that kill scene where the guy throws them through the antlers. Like, I mean, there was definitely some homages to Texas Chainsaw for sure.
Oh God, that scene where is it the guy at the cemetery? He jumps down. He feels compelled to jump down there inside, like on top of the casket.
Oh yeah,
just something about that. Just is like you're already, in very sketchy territory being in there to begin with, and then the casket opens up, and the kid's just staring at him. There's just so many moments in it that they're just so iconic. They're creepy. it feels like it's perpetually, you're seeing like this plague take over this town.
Mhm.
It continually starts to ramp up as the miniseries goes on. Now, which scenes stand out for, let's say their effective use of like shadows, silence, camera angles? Are there certain ones that are more memorable to you guys?
I think the big ones, obviously the window scene, the one where Barlow sits up, the one where Barlow
Mhm.
shows up in the kitchen. I also think that like now, like we talked about earlier, that whole end scene in the house where they're all kind of moving around and shit's like going down, to just see that set piece and to see all the detail. Like he said, I have seen this movie plenty of times and never once did my eyes catch the decor and the way that how grimy it looked in there. Like there was no upkeep to that house. Like I never caught that before. I just felt like they were in the house, they're getting shit done. Like I didn't see all that before. So it
Yeah.
just goes to show what kind of restoration was put into this movie. And it also goes to show how much time, love, and TLC was put into making the movie, which again, when I look at this, I'm like, man, besides the length, like why was this a miniseries? Why was this made for TV? They put so much time and
So
effort to
good.
this, and it
Mhm.
did really well. And that's why overseas it became a movie after this, after the success of this. But you wonder why this wasn't something that was a theatrical hit. I don't know if you guys know that, but I do know around that time, made for TV horror and especially vampires after Kolchak was like a huge thing. So everybody wanted to kind of jump on board with that. And I don't know if that's the reason or what it was.
I don't know, but man, I mean, even the acting,
Mhm.
you think even for a made for TV horror, the acting is very, very well. I think of the guy that we talked about, the scene where he catches his wife in bed with
Oh
the
God.
man that she works with, but his acting is so the scene when he's sitting there and he's like, hold still, see, you can't control yourself, little things like that. But his acting is so well done in that scene, and I always thought that when I saw this movie was the husband incredible. It was incredible.
Yeah. No, I agree. And do you guys feel like the special effects hold up today? I mean, on
I think
rewatch?
everything in this movie holds up
Yeah.
today. It's actually almost crazy how a made for TV movie can still look so
Mhm.
good. And I think the 4K only proves that even more. Is
Yeah.
that even when you really get into the detail of this thing, sometimes when we put a 4K in or even an HD, sometimes I mean, Jesus, that Kevin Bacon death scene in Friday the 13th looks worse and worse every time a new edition comes out. And that was like an iconic scene, but now
Yeah.
watching it, it's almost laughable on how
Yeah.
fucking terrible that looks. And then you put a movie like this on, which is supposedly made for TV in the 70s, and you're like, wow, like it's flawless as far as some of those effects. And like Barlow's makeup looks great, the kids' makeup look great. Like
Oh,
I think everything just really still stands a test of time.
I think
Mhm.
the vampire look, especially with the kids and even the guy that he sits up in the chair, like
Yes, yeah.
for any of those, I think that's where it really shines the most when it comes to the special effects. And it's very a subtle look with like the glowing eyes, the sharpened fangs, but it works. Um,
Well, it does such a good job as it's not crazy other than Barlow. Barlow's a different story, but
right.
the other vampires, it's almost in that I akin to it to like that uncanny valley, right?
Hmm.
There's just enough different to them that makes it up that creep factor
For sure.
because there's still something about him that's very human.
Yeah. I would agree. And why do you guys think that Salem's Lot remained such a notable vampire story decades later?
I think it's obviously, like I said, I didn't read the book, so I don't know if that has a big help to it. But I mean, I think it's so simple but effective. It's a simple story that just kind of works, and I don't know if it's just that small town feel where it's like it could happen anywhere. But it wasn't much to it. Like two people move into the town and they want to take this town over with vampires, and it's up to this guy that used to live there to try to stop them. I mean, and using like a kid from the town to help them. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a very easy story, but I think everything just works because I think the biggest thing that they really did well that a lot of movies have a tough time doing from a book is making all those other characters feel important. no matter
Exactly.
how much they're on screen. In a book, you have so many extra pages to flush these characters out, where sometimes it's hard to kind of get that same feel with a movie, and they figured it out.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Um, well, I figure what better way to cap off tonight with one of my personal favorites, and that's none other than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Look at that. Hell yeah. I always okay, so I always joke about this that we always talk about holding in high regards Texas Chainsaw. Obviously, it's such an iconic and important film, but there's something about this movie that has so much rewatch value for me, and it's so ridiculous that I almost like put it up there. I'm like, man, I don't know which one I like more. They're both important in their own ways. This movie, I could throw it on whenever and watch it. It just gets more ridiculous and silly as time goes on. And I feel like it's one of those rare instances, kind of like Return of the Living Dead, where you can combine horror and comedy and it works so effectively. Um, why, for you guys, how does the sequel balance horror and dark comedy compared to the original?
I think the element of the family is there, which is good. But it is it's so different than the original one based on everything we already talked about earlier and what makes the original one work. This is totally on the other end of the spectrum of how they were going to play this. And it's very strange. And it's very strange that it works too, because now you're taking these characters that were just ruthless characters, and now you're adding this weird kind of comedic element to it. It almost feels like an MTV version of Texas
Yeah.
Chainsaw Massacre. Like it's so odd, and especially like look at that poster art, that iconic poster art that you showed on that VHS tape.
Yeah.
Like, what balls did it take for him to be like, fuck it, we're gonna just do this and let's make it like a Breakfast Club cover and all that. Like, it just doesn't. Yeah, like it's the whole thing should have never worked, but
No.
but it did. It does. It's crazy. It's very strange.
It feels like very much like a fever dream all the way from the opening until the batshit crazy ending, where she's, Caroline Williams, she's on top of the tower, just like doing her own
dance.
her own variation of the chainsaw dance. I don't know what it is about this movie that just is it's I don't know. It's just so crazy to me. I don't know how, like, it just the fact that they got Tobe Hooper to come back for this one, and he obviously did something very different, because it's like you can't really, beat the original. Where did you guys initially discover this movie? Was this early on? I would assume probably after the first Texas Chainsaw, or a little bit later on down the line.
This was definitely later down the line for me. So this would have been this was the first time I had seen it, was this a release right here.
Okay.
This weird release with like him on the front. Like, it's that still just boggles my mind that this was the artwork they chose for the first DVD version of this. It's one of those more iconically bad DVD artworks. But that was the first time I got this for Christmas, actually, because like I said before, I had my Texas Chainsaw Massacre VHS tape running around, bringing it to everybody's house, showing everybody. So Christmas time came around. It was either, maybe a year or two later, and this thing was something I opened. What year would this have been out?
Who put it out?
Probably this came out in 2000. So
okay.
I'm just trying to think of where I was age-wise there. So yeah, so 2000, like I was like fresh out of, I was like a senior in high school.
Okay.
And so that's probably the December I ended up getting this thing. So I mean, it was huge for me at that time. So it was so different, but it worked, and I can't even explain it now on why that is. But I think it's a great sequel, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I feel like, and I don't know if you guys felt the same way. I remember the first time watching this, and it felt so jarring compared to the original, because I didn't know it was anything like this. So when I go into watching the sequel, I'm, going down the winding road that is all the Texas Chainsaw sequels, for better or worse. This definitely was one that kind of took me by surprise, but nonetheless, it was such a wild experience. that I don't know. There's not too many movies that have left that type of impression on me. Jordan, what about with you? Did you find out about this early on or a little bit later?
No, this was definitely a later one for me. But it was later to the point where it was kind of known as the comedic version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I knew going in what I kind of was getting into. And man, it's just a fun movie that I feel like only Tobe Hooper could have done.
For sure.
And man, I mean, from Bill Moseley as Chop Top, such a that whole shot of him, Leatherface, and Stretch in the recording studio. I mean, and then even leading down to them driving down over the bridge, right? And you have Leatherface with the body right on top of the car. To Dennis Hopper testing out chainsaws at the store. I mean, there's
oh my god,
this movie has so many iconic scenes. It's such a great one. This was an instant love for me. And this is, dare I say, maybe has a little bit more rewatchability than the first one. I don't know, man. It's such a good movie.
Thank you, Jordan.
You know what I mean? So it's hard to say. They're so polar opposites, but they're both so good.
What other movie do you get dual wielding chainsaws and Dennis Hopper screaming, "I'm the Lord of the Harvest"?
Yeah.
Like I can't think of any other movies that come close to this. So how do you guys feel like, obviously I know we talked about Leatherface, and his appearance in the first film, but for this one, do you guys feel like he involves in this film as far as his portrayal?
Yeah, it's again, I look at this and I feel like it's just turned up 10 notches. It's
he's romantic.
You get the new brother, you get the new brother in there from Moseley. I don't know. It feels just very rock and roll, for this kind of movie. So I feel like he just kind of takes that character and just cranks it up a couple notches.
Jordan, what about you?
What was the question again?
About Leatherface. Did you feel like this evolved his performance?
I think so. I mean, you have the scene where she's trying to convince Leatherface, like, "Hey, come on, you're not a bad guy. Let's get out of here." And you get another depth to who Leatherface is, I think, in this movie.
Yeah, I definitely feel like he's romantic. He is just, I feel like he's just there for a good time throughout the film. When they're at the radio station and just the crazy antics, how he just busts through the door and knocks who's the guy? I'm totally blanking on what his name is.
I don't remember.
Completely knocks him over. Then they just start going crazy on him. When he's over here like thrusting the chainsaws, it all works. And what new threats do you guys feel like the Sawyer family presents in this movie, and how do they compare to the original? Because we obviously get some new members that are added into the mix.
Well, I think they have a bigger fortress.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
And how do the Texas landscapes and carnival-like sequences create atmosphere? Speaking of which, you feel like that works for this movie?
It does. It just feels like it lost a lot of that grit, though, that that first one had. What we were talking about before with like the hot heat and everything felt dirty. Like I feel like this is a little bit more polished. So it's definitely a different feel for me. Like I don't get that same feel as I did watching that first one. But again, there's not many movies that you take the same characters and you can make it work in such a polar opposite type of style. And it's a lot to say about Tobe Hooper even having the balls to do something like this with the movie that made him famous, right? Like you'd figure they wouldn't have, they'd be like, oh, I've got to kind of, see if I can strike gold twice. And he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to try it this way. And for it to actually work and be accepted by horror fans is pretty telling.
Yeah, I feel like it's it kind of, we were talking about Jaws earlier, and much different films, in comparison to each other, but it almost makes me wonder, would if any other director was to try and take on an iconic movie that they put out with their first one, Jaws, for example, you follow it up with a comedic sequel that balances that tone between horror and dark comedy, would it have been received as well? I'm not really sure, but I feel like Tobe Hooper was able to effectively do that so well. Now, do you guys feel like this sequel tries to push the limits of what horror can be in the 80s?
I do, actually. I think it really does kind of show you horror was so interesting in the 80s. It took so many different directions, right? Like you can't add a comedic element to it and still have it effective and scary. I mean, I talked about Fright Night earlier. There's comedic elements in Fright Night, and Fright Night's a really well done movie, from front to back. Every part of it, I think, is almost perfect. And they add that little bit of comedic elements to it, and it just feels very 80s in its own way. Lost Boys is the same thing. Like,
For sure.
It's got a lot of comedic elements in that movie, and horror comedies were starting to kind of, flourish, I think, in the 80s. And I do think this was one of those movies that kind of, almost like we said, it basically was the MTV version of Texas Chainsaw, being like, okay, we're in the 80s now, and this is kind of how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. I think another good example would be like The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2.
Yeah,
it's a prime example of
it's a great example.
Taking what you did and let's change it up. Let's go into this as a kind of a comedic angle that really works.
Yeah,
and were there certain scenes in this film that either shocked or amused you the most? Were there certain ones that stand out to you guys?
I like the whole idea with the he's making the food for the town folk.
The chili.
Yeah. I like the cook. Obviously the scene with the saw with the girl where he's pushing it into her. I think that's a pretty iconic
provocative
scene. I also think the beginning, with the college dudes is a pretty iconic scene too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like how they kind of do a callback with Grandpa hitting the head with the hammer. I mean, this one obviously turned the comedy aspect of that up a lot. That one stood out to me a lot. Of course, seeing Dennis Hopper with the dual wielding chainsaw,
testing him out at the shop,
and then he goes out and goes to the log, and there's this whole he just looks like he's getting his every bit of anger he's ever had in him out on this. The
store owner is just like, he's just clapping, happy as can be. I'm like, what is this guy's deal? Has he been waiting for this moment his whole life or what?
Yeah,
crazy. And did you feel like the sequel felt like a continuation of the original or a completely different experience for you guys?
It was different for me.
It was different, but I like that they kept to the original in the sense that, like, you had the same characters, like the cook was the same, but then you had like Chop Top and he's the other brother, but then you still had remnants of the hitchhiker with what the hell was his name there? What's the thing he's carrying around there? Like, I didn't realize for years that that's who that was. What the hell is Nubbins? The Nubbins thing.
Oh, is it?
That's Hitchhiker. That's just his
really?
mangled body that they're carrying around. Yeah. So if the thing that Chop Top's got, what is he doing? Or is it like the beginning scene where they have it they have it over Leatherface's body.
Mm-hmm. In that chase scene.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
I didn't even realize that's who that was.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the hitchhiker's body. So like they, everything is kind of there in its own weird way. So type in Nubbins. And
I'm looking at it right now, and you can see he's got his little bag of tricks around his neck, and
that's so crazy.
One that
always kind of almost gives it, now that it's like, it gives it almost a little bit cooler of a feel too.
Yeah. One always gets me is the kind of character character about Chop Top is the wire, the coat hanger, eating and what a guy.
Oh man, so much fun. And how would kind of wrapping things up? I mean, how would you personally rank this film among Tobe Hooper's filmography? And I just kind of wanted to get a quick, maybe top 3 for you guys as far as out of the films that we discussed.
Well, what's funny is thinking about his filmography. like these are all so great. These movies, like to me, this is just banger after banger,
Mhm.
and we still didn't even talk about some other ones. Like, I mean, Invaders from Mars is
Oh, that's
a
true.
great freaking remake. I mean, it's fantastic, and I'm a fan of The Mangler. I actually think that's a pretty damn cool Stephen King like kind of adaptation. I like that a lot. Um, what else did he do? He did a Toolbox Murders remake, and it's okay, I guess. Crocodile, I don't remember much about it. But yeah, like there's other movies in his filmography where you're like, damn, like he had some great hits. Like a lot of these movies are just really good. So for me, it has to be Texas Chainsaw, Salem's Lot, and probably Funhouse for me.
Okay. Jordan, what about you?
Those are good ones. I would put those three up there, but TCM2 just has to be in there somewhere, and I don't know where
Dude,
to put
I
it.
love where this is going.
That's my problem.
Is that number one?
No, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is number one. Just one out of how much I love the movie, and one out of the respect I have for the movie.
Yeah.
Man, this is tough, guys. You know what? Let's go Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1, 2, and Salem's Lot. I'll do those three. That's hard. And I feel like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1, 2 could sometimes catch me on the right time. It could be flipped. So I feel like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and 2 can both be tied for one, honestly.
Yeah, I like that answer. Man, it's so tough because I know for sure definitively Texas Chainsaw I put up there. I'd probably put Salem's Lot afterwards, and then I keep going back and forth on the third option, either being Texas Chainsaw 2 or Life Force. I have an affinity for Life Force, and it has nothing to do with Matilda May, but that's so tough. Yeah, it'd probably be in some order similar to that. Depends on the day.
Yeah.
But how wild is that we just did this and nobody said Poltergeist, and it's literally like his biggest hit ever. It's wild.
I know. That's
how good he is, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure, absolutely. Well, listen, that's it for tonight's deep dive into the sweaty, unsettling world of Tobe Hooper. Huge thanks to both of you guys for joining and guiding us through these terrifying, unforgettable films. Guys, where can everyone find you? And do you have anything coming up that you want to promote? Garrett, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure, man. You can find me at Born to Be Rad, and I'm on all social media platforms. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. And I recently just put out my review on the Salem's Lot and the 4K. So we talk a lot about what I talk about in that review, but I just put out today my review on the Frankenhooker 4K.
Oh man,
that just came out from Synapse, which is one to listen to and watch, especially if you haven't bought it yet, because there's a lot of stuff I kind of deep dive on that too. That is a little bit, it's not service level stuff that maybe people are like, hey, you know what, like I'm gonna check that out or not check it out. And I'm also doing a giveaway too. So if you want to check that out, be eligible to win something in that video. Then coming up, I'm actually going to be doing a made for TV horror video coming up this week.
Yeah.
And some other video that I have coming up because next week's my birthday. So I'm going to do a video kind of dedicated to that at the end of the week. So
Jordan, is it yours coming up too, Jordan?
It is next week. When's your birthday, Garrett?
5th.
Mine's the 31st.
So we're gonna have to do a joint birthday stream. Jordan, where can everyone find you at? What do you have coming up?
Yeah, so you can find me over on Instagram and YouTube, mainly the Movie Den, talking about movies with the emphasis on physical media. New stuff. I just started a brand new podcast with Chris, the Bearded Film Guy, called The Fireside Collection, where it's a weekly podcast where we just talk about, movies we've been watching. It's not dedicated to just horror. Obviously, it's going to have a strong emphasis on it, but it's from streaming to physical media, movies we own to theaters. So check that out. And that is on the same podcast production team as Beyond the Blood. So someone's favorite productions. Yep. So we are on there. So we exciting. Just recorded our first podcast. I got to follow up with Chris. I think that's going to come out here and pretty soon. I can't remember the exact dates. Sorry about that. Like Garrett, I just did a review for Salem's Lot and Frankenhooker actually. Which Frankenhooker, I gotta say, the 4K looks great. The colors in that movie pop so good in that.
Can't
4K.
wait to watch it.
But anyways, coming up, we took March off of Fear by Year. We were going to be doing it with KB, and just honestly, the reason why is March got away from us. It just flew by too fast. So
That's true.
we're gonna kick that back up in April, and just something to look forward to. And then yeah, that's really about all I have.
Very nice. And then you guys can find me at After Hours Video, as well as I'm one of the co-hosts for Beyond the Blood. You can check that out, streaming, wherever your podcast platforms are available. Before you guys go, don't forget to check out Valoria Video and use promo code After Hours 10 for 10% off your order. Put that down at the bottom. And Garrett, don't you also have one as well? Jordan, are you trying to use it or what?
No, I'm just trying to.
For Valoria?
Yeah.
I don't. I've actually been talking to him though. But I don't. But if anybody goes to Gutter Garbs, you can use code.
Oh, there you go.
So I got this. I think I used your code.
And then Jordan, you have one for the movie room, correct?
The movie room. Yep. Okay. Movie Den 10 over at the movie room.
See, we've got you covered. So whether it's clothing, movies, building out your physical media collection, we got you covered. So make sure you grab your next horror fix, stock up on the classics, and keep the terror alive. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a trip down the horror aisle. From the aisles of After Hours Video to your living room. Keep your lights low, your movies ready, and your nightmares close. We'll catch you on the next episode of After Dark.